The examples of the Japanese and Asian crises illustrate how crises can be engineered to facilitate the redistribution of economic ownership and to implement legal, structural, and political change. Today, similar events are at work in the Eurozone area. Countries within the euro currency bloc have forfeited their right to a national currency and handed this power to the European Central Bank.
With me here in the studio is Richard Werner. He's the professor at Southampton University. Richard was an advisor to the Bank of Japan and the Ministry of Finance at the end of the bubble era in the 1990s. What's your advice to the ECB? They meet tomorrow. What would you be telling them?
Well, again, I mean, they have to focus on the quantity of credit creation more than interest rates. The ECB has a lot to learn from its past mistakes, because basically I think it didn't really watch carefully enough credit creation, where in Spain, Ireland, we had a massive credit expansion under the watch of the ECB. They didn't look at that. Interest rates, of course, are the same in the Eurozone, but the quantity of credit cycle was very different.
There's one interest rate for the whole euro area, but in 2002 the ECB told the Bundesbank to reduce its credit creation by the biggest amount in its history, and told the Irish Central Bank to print as much money as if there's no tomorrow. What do you expect is going to happen? Same interest rate. Is the same growth? No. Recession in Germany, boom in Ireland. Which one tells you that? Which variable? Credit creation.
From 2004, under the ECB's watch, bank credit growth in Ireland, Greece, Portugal and Spain increased by over 20% per annum, and property prices skyrocketed. When bank credit fell, property prices collapsed, developers went bankrupt, and the banking systems of Ireland, Portugal, Spain and Greece became insolvent. The ECB could have prevented these bubbles, just as it could have ended the ensuing banking and economic crises, but it refused to do so until major political concessions had been made, such as the transfer of fiscal and budgeting powers from each sovereign state to the European Union. In both Spain and Greece, youth unemployment has been pushed up to 50%, forcing many youths to seek employment abroad. Greek doctors, for whose education Greek taxpayers have paid, now work in Germany. The deliberations of the ECB's decision-making bodies are secret. The mere attempt at influencing the ECB, for instance through democratic debate and discussion, is forbidden according to the Maastricht Treaty. The ECB is an international organization that is above and outside the laws and jurisdictions of any individual nation. Its senior staff carry diplomatic passports, and the files and documents inside the European Central Bank cannot be searched or impounded by any police force or public prosecutor. The ECB is well known among economists as one of the world's most powerful and least transparent central banks. Yet its former president, Jean-Claude Trichet, dealt with this problem by merely asserting that there was no problem. The ECB is one of the most transparent central banks in the world and has helped define the state-of-the-art of central banking in this domain, he claimed.
The gentleman over there. Yes, please.
My name is Richard Werner. I'm an economist. My question is for Monsieur Trichet, who's also been for years member of the Governing Council of the ECB. The question is, where in the Maastricht Treaty or ECB statutes does it say that it's the job of the ECB to back structural reform or any other political agenda?
I said very, very clearly, and we have all said very, very clearly, that we had no responsibility in this domain. We have a voice, and we say in this domain and in some others what we think. And perhaps if we can help in explaining from our side to the general people that they would be better off, perhaps it would help Europe embarking in this implementation of structural reforms, which is so important, and there is a consensus on that. The diagnosis, again, is a very, very, very large consensus on this point.
The European Commission, an unelected group whose aim is to build a United States of Europe with all the trappings of a unified state, has an interest in weakening individual governments and the influence of the democratic parliaments of Europe. It turns out that the evidence for central bank independence that was relied upon in the Maastricht Treaty derived from a single study that was commissioned by none other than the European Commission itself. Published in 1992 under the name One Market, One Money, the study purported to demonstrate that central bank independence led to low inflation. James Forder, an Oxford academic, has since demonstrated that this study was manipulated to obtain the desired result.
The story we're being told by the central banks just does not add up, and there is evidence that central banks work differently from what they would like us believe as to how they work.
The world over, central banks hold significant yet little understood powers. Often independent, unaccountable and obscure, central banks operate in the shadows, yet their actions affect us all.
Central banks in almost all countries worldwide, and the IMF has helped a lot in achieving this, they've become totally independent and in practice not accountable to any democratic institution, and accountability to parliaments is usually minor and in practice meaningless.
Whether it is the Bank of Japan, the Federal Reserve, the Bank of England or the European Central Bank, examples of central bank deception abound. In the United States in the 1920s, banks were encouraged to create money and give it to speculators. The resulting depression persuaded the freedom-loving Americans that a decentralized federal system without strong national controls could not work. In the 1990s, the Japanese were persuaded that their economic system, which had brought considerable prosperity and equality, needed to be changed into a so-called free market system. And while Japan's transformation was not yet complete, the central bankers struck again with an IMF-led raid on the Asian tiger economies. The present European debt crisis is yet another example of central bank deception. To create a public consensus for the need for structural reform, by purposefully creating a recession and then needlessly prolonging it, must constitute an abuse of power. Do citizens really want to be manipulated in such a costly and dishonest manner?